Hello and welcome to the Fosterdaddirective podcast. As always, I'm Charles, and today we will be going over a list of 10 surprising things that foster parents can't do with their foster kids. This list seems to be from a place that's out of California, so it's going to vary pretty differently from what I've experienced, but I believe it's got a good foundation to it and it's a good thing to go over. So, as always, please remember I'm not a trained professional. Most of what I go off from is my own experience, information I find, and a lot of it is just my own personal opinion. So please look into it, make sure that the information is correct before you go using it as a solid foundation for any action you might take. So the list contains the 10 items as follows. You can't alter their appearance without permission, share their faces on social media, leave them with unapproved babysitters, refuse to vaccinate, leave them at home alone, permit co-sleeping arrangements, changing of names, moving to other states or countries, sharing their names or photos in newspaper articles, or allowing them to do dangerous activities. So the first one is changing their appearance without permission. Even if it's been done in the past, it's always good procedure just to go over it again. You don't want to pierce their ears, cut or dye their hair, or anything else that might overall change their appearance and be permanent. And this is because it might be against the well wishes of the parents if they still currently have custody. That, or it could potentially be seen as trying to hide their identity, such as when you watch a movie and somebody goes on the lam, they change their appearance. So it's good procedure just to check with the foster care worker and ensure that it is allowed. If possible, I'd get it in text just to be safe because you never know. And personally, I always like to have things in writing so that if somebody says something, I can always show that information. And the second is share their faces on social media. This is going to go for essentially anything. That's Facebook, Snapchat, even like texting pictures to your family. You want to make sure you're not sharing anything that could get shared further out just because you are trying to protect the privacy of the kids and their family. It's not really acceptable to share that the child is in foster care just because that is a touchy subject for families, especially if they're going through a rough time. Plus, you never know in the future that kid may not want to have that information known. For us, we've had kids who they pretty much share with everybody that they've been in foster care, but the best procedure to do is take an emoji and put it over top of their face if you want to share like a family photo. I know it seems weird and you want to have them feel like they're part of the family, but just from a legal standpoint and protecting their identity, do not share this information and their appearance, even if you know it's temporary, like Snapchat, and gonna be seen by like one person, just because there is always that potential that it could get out. Kind of like any other viral picture, to be honest. You never know what's going to go viral these days. Number 3 is leaving them with unapproved babysitters. This is for long periods of time. You want to make sure you get that approved caregiver form signed. For us, we have my roommate along with my wife's best friend who was in the foster care system as a worker. She worked in different areas such as adoption, the foster care portion, stuff like that. So she has a lot of experience with that and has actually been our approved caregiver for little vacations we've taken. So always make sure you get that form signed out. Don't just leave them with somebody just because you trust that person. I mean, if you look at all the statistics, the people who are most likely to harm your children are people that you know and trust. So make sure you get that form filled out and make sure it is somebody that you truly, truly trust. Number 4 is actually refusing to vaccinate them. I don't really like the wording of this one because it goes both ways. You can't also vaccinate a child in Michigan without permission as well. We actually ran into an issue with a social worker because she assumed that we had vaccinated the toddler without permission, even though we had solid evidence. We had text messages along with signed forms and everything that we did have permission. So she was hassling my wife over this, assuming that we did not give permission to vaccinate the toddler, even though we absolutely did. So please make sure that you are getting that in writing, if nothing else. Even if you don't get the appearance stuff in writing, make sure you cover yourself. Cover your behind, because it may come back to bite you, because you never know when information is going to come up or when somebody's going to look into something and then assume you were in the wrong. And if you don't have that in writing, it's your word against the agencies. And honestly, I always just assume that the state is going to go with the agency. So make sure you're covering yourself at all times. I can't say it enough. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Make sure you have that in writing. And number 5 is going to be don't leave them at home without adult supervision. This is for younger children. If you have older teens and stuff, we're normally, if we have to run out and they don't want to go, we don't force them to get in the car and go out with us and run a bunch of errands. I mean, for us, we always have, my roommate is essentially always home, so he's generally able to just be here in case something happens. We do have the Alexa, which can be used for emergency services. All of our teens have had phones, so there's not really that worry about safety because they're generally able to contact emergency services if needed. And number 6 is permit co-sleeping arrangements. Even if they're a super young child that, for families where the kid has come, had a bad dream, wants to lay with the parents, do not do that. In the forum, it talks about how it could trigger other events, like past trauma and stuff. You also aren't related to that child. You don't want that. You don't want any misconstrued stuff. You want to make sure you're being appropriate with the child, because this could also change things in the future to where they think that's appropriate behavior with someone who's not safe. You may have the best of intentions, but if that child leaves your care in the future, they might see that as appropriate, and it's truly not, and it could be setting them up for danger in the future. You could be teaching them something that could potentially put them in harm's way, so just make sure you're looking out for their best interest, thinking about what could happen in the future, and making sure you're setting them up for the best future that they can have. Number 7 is change their names. This one, you're not really going to have any chance to change their names if you're fostering. Even if you adopt, from my understanding of the whole process is you change their birth certificate if you adopt them. And I believe that just puts you as their legal parents and their legal guardians. I don't believe it actually does anything for name change. That's something to look into. Please don't take this as fact. I know for if a step parent adopts a child, they can generally change their name and become last name and become like the adoptive parent. But in this circumstance, especially this website says even last names you can't, even if you become their permanent family. I gotta think that's wrong, but honestly, double check if you're getting to the point of adoption. If you're doing long-term fostering, the state still is their guardian, so there's not really going to be much of a chance for you to even come to this road barrier unless you go to the point of permanency and you are looking to adopt. So make sure you look into this. Don't try to fill out any forms if you're just fostering, because you will end up yourself up in hot water, because while fostering, you are technically not their legal guardian. At least in Michigan, the state is. That's why you have to get permission for those other things, such as changing appearances and who can provide care to your child. And number 8 is actually move to a different state or travel overseas. This one's not broad enough because you can't even travel out of state or overseas. And if you travel in Michigan to a different area and plan to stay for a few days, you also have to make sure that information is known to your caseworker. You want to make sure you are letting them know in case something happens, in case the kid has to go to the hospital, or honestly anything happens. You want to make sure the agency knows where you're going so that they can relay that to the family if the family does still have custody. And then any moves that are going to be out of state or overseas are going to go through the agency, just like the one kid we had who is in another state right now. That was all through the agency and the state. They made that decision, so we had nothing to do with it. And this also goes for getting their passport and stuff. Don't go and do that on your own. Make sure you check with the caseworker. We did have one kid who wanted to go see a parent that was in Mexico, so that would have been on her to do along with our caseworker. We weren't going to end up filling that stuff out for her, just because that's a dangerous precedent to set, and we wanted to make sure that everything was done properly. Number 9 was actually share their names and photos in news articles. This one's a good rule. It's kind of like sharing it on social media. I don't know why they made them different ones, because in general you should not share any of their stuff. We've even asked like schools and stuff not to put their pictures up. It's just kind of best practice, just in case they do get noticed, in case they're in the news for their case at all. You don't want somebody in the general public finding out that they went through a certain thing and having them start being treated different, or that information to get out to where it becomes a safety hazard for the child. You want to make sure you can do as much as possible, again, to make sure that they are protected when out of your care and everything. So you want to make sure, I know it kind of, as this states, prevents them from feeling their accomplishments and locking them out of certain possibilities. But in here it says it prevents them from getting scholarships and internships. The scholarships, they get money for college, so that's not a huge deal. In internships, once they're 18, they can make those choices for themselves. I mean, we've had kids who've still been in foster care at the age of 18, so that would be on them to kind of make those decisions if you don't get the decision, especially because they can go to independent living and be on their own where you would have no control over that. So make sure you check with your caseworker if you have any questions about that. And finally, number 10 is allow them to partake in dangerous activities. This one's super important because you don't want the child getting hurt. You don't want anything that could be construed as you putting them in danger, such as dangerous sports. Firearms especially is a huge one. Things like motorcycles, driving different motor vehicles. You want to make sure all of this is prevented and they are, again, as safe as possible. That is your main concern, is keeping them safe and looking out for their welfare. That is physically, emotionally, educational, wellness, and everything like that. Please be sure that if you have any questions about that, you reach out to their caseworker. The one thing I found super weird in this was they put having sleepovers as a dangerous activity. Yes, that can be. Again, you should always check with your caseworker, because there are rules in Michigan about what can and can't be done in terms of a sleepover. It's generally about making sure that the child is safe and making sure that the parents of the child where the foster kid is staying know about the different rules and safety measures that need to be taken. So please look into all that and make sure you are taking the right precautions if you're allowing them to stay over or having another child stay over. It's always good just to make sure, open door policy, making sure that the door is open if there's kids of different genders in the room together, making sure that they are in common areas if it's boyfriend and girlfriend, things like that. So overall, I did find this list pretty helpful. It does cover the main points of what you can and can't do as a foster parent. It didn't provide quite as much information as I would have liked. It was pretty general, but I mean, it's just one of those kind of lists to give you an overall information about being a foster parent. So if you have any other items that you feel are important that you can or can't do as a foster parent, please reach out. I can always do another episode and share those. And as always, please subscribe. You can email me at fosterdaddirective@gmail.com if you have any information or topics you'd like to see. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Bye.